Fellow eyeshadow palette lovers, it is our time again. I don't know if you've noticed, but this past holiday season, we've actually got quite a few actually kind of interesting eyeshadow palette launches. It's been such a long time. So as promised in yesterday's video, I am going to go over all of the new eyeshadow palettes available at Sephora right now. I have 15 different palettes that I'm going to talk about today. There's a few more days left in the Sephora sale, so I wanted to give you guys my honest opinions on these. So I'm going to start off by doing individual reviews of the palettes, and then at the very end, we'll do it ranking style. I didn't want to do it ranking style this time around because I wanted to organize by brand first for the whole picture, and then how I would personally rank them. But if you've been wondering which eyeshadow palette would be best for you, I hope that this video is able to narrow down those options for you. We'll get into formula, color story, and who I think the palettes are best for. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to group these. We'll do it kind of by, we have 3 male celebrity makeup artists. We have my holy trinity, Pat McGrath, Natasha, Denona, and Danessa Myricks. And then we'll start off actually first with the eyeshadow palette that I'm wearing to get those questions out of the way. So the first new eyeshadow palette that I'm going to talk about is probably one of the least talked about in today's video, but I did see some murmurs about it online. It is the newest eyeshadow palette in my collection, so this is the one that I have practiced the least with. So do keep that in mind because I did pick this up early on for the Sephora sale. This is the ABH Mini Embers eyeshadow palette, and in previous years these little 9-pan palettes have been fantastic from ABH, so I was really excited to try this one out. And this is only $32, which for a Sephora eyeshadow is a very good price. Now this is different than previous palettes from ABH because I feel like in the past they've had a lot of metallic shades. This one is more kind of satiny. It's a little bit toned down. Now what a lot of people have compared this palette to is the original ABH and Makeup by Mario collab palette from years ago that was limited edition and never came back even though people begged for it. It was a stunning palette, and there's lots of people online who have done side-by-side swatches, and this really is reminiscent of that original Makeup by Mario palette, and this is beautiful, you guys. Like I said, it is what I'm wearing on my eyes today. I think it is a stunning palette for fall. So to get today's look, I started off with this matte shade in my crease. I blended that out, and then I went in with this dark warm brown in the outer corner, and this is a shade that I wouldn't normally reach for, but I wanted to today to try out exactly what this palette can do. So I just put this all over my eyelid, and I did the same on the lower lash line to get this really simple, warm, brown, smoky eye. It is stunning. Knowing ABH, I actually was quite shocked with how many satin shades were in this palette. There are 3 true matte shades, and then honestly the rest are satin. This one is more shimmery, but these can kind of be softened out to where they look more satin. So it's a different element for ABH. I think it's definitely a lot more older, a lot more mature of a style of makeup, and it is gorgeous. The shadows blended beautifully. You do get some kickback with them, so make sure you tap off your brush. But thus far, I have had no complaints with this palette. I think it's stunning, but it is interesting because, you know, in years past, ABH was known for their really metallic, gorgeous shimmers, and this is very toned down, but I like this direction. I would like to see a little bit more of a mature route from ABH now that their core audience from a few years ago when they were at their peak have also, I think, matured with the times. Interesting direction. I think it's interesting that they launched this, but what you see is what you get. It's a gorgeous palette. I don't think it's for everybody, but if you're looking for a nice, wearable, kind of warm fall eyeshadow palette for every day, I think you would really, really enjoy this one. So I've been loving it. Let's move into the male makeup artists, celebrity makeup artists. No reason, I'm just grouping by brand here. So we'll talk about Hung Van Gogh because he is taking up half of this video, and this is really exciting. He launched 8 eyeshadow palettes for his brand, which just recently launched a couple months ago. So this is a way to start off your brand with a bang, and they already won in Allure Best of Beauty Awards. They are $49 each, and you get very, very different color stories. But part of the reason why this video isn't a ranking is because I do have mixed feelings about some of these palettes. I feel a little inconsistent about some of these palettes. So first, let's go over all of the swatches. So all of the palettes come in this vibrant red-orange packaging. It's very, very simple how he did his line, numbered 1 through 8 here, no real names to the actual shades, and it's done by color story, which I really appreciate. I also think I can see where a makeup artist would have that in mind. So there's the new neutral palette, which has more obviously neutral shades. We also have the composed cool palette, which this one I definitely want to get a little bit more playtime out of. It is a true cool toned gray palette. There also is the wonderful warm palette, which I think is a beautiful palette for the fall. But if you're not a neutral person, don't worry, he is catered to you as well with the passionate purple, a purple eyeshadow palette, of course. We also have rebellious red and pinks here. I'm going to talk about each of these color stories individually soon because, like I said, I do have some varying opinions here. Brilliant blue, which is a very vibrant blue palette, probably the most vibrant palette available at Sephora right now. We also have gorgeous green and yellow, and then finally, to close off the color stories, we have outstanding orange. So what I am noticing with these palettes after having played with each of these at least once, multiple of these I've gotten multiple wears out of, I much prefer the neutral palettes in this range compared to the colorful color stories. So by far, in my opinion, the best palette that you can get in this range is the new neutral. I love this palette. I think this is a very well done eyeshadow palette. The shimmers in the mattes are a little bit more of a buildable formulation. You can get more of a sheer layer, but you can also build them up to get more pigment, but it's not a wham bam pigment right off the bat. What I love about this particular palette is there's a couple glimmery shades, there's more of a satiny shade, and then a true metallic shade. Very easy to use. If you are a heavy-handed person, this formula is really, really nice because it's not super heavily pigmented like, for example, ABH might be, which is not a bad thing in either direction. It just kind of depends what you're looking for. But I think this is such a well-curated and well-designed neutral palette for 8 shades. I really feel like he covered all bases. So that is my favorite. The wonderful warm palette I think is also very well curated as well. It is a neutral palette, just leaning a little bit more warm, but it's not too orange, so I think a lot of people are going to love it. You also have a lot of varying depths in the browns here and the shimmers. We have some satin shades here as well. I do enjoy this one a lot also. Now, Composed Cool. It is a very grayscale palette, so it's not one that I've reached for a lot, if I'm being honest, so do keep that in mind, but I do think it is a really nice palette. I like this one. I do recommend this one as well. As we get into the colorful palettes, that's kind of where my opinions change, and it doesn't matter if I wear colors or not. I'm speaking of the quality here. The Passionate Purple, unfortunately, was one of my least favorite palettes in this range. I found that a lot of the purple colors were just too close to one another. There wasn't enough variety in depths and undertones, and you can do a lot with purples, which is the opposite of how I felt about the new neutrals, where I felt like there was different tones, different finishes, textures, depths. A lot of these shades just look very, very similar on the eyelid, and I also didn't find this one to be the easiest to work out with. I was able to get a gorgeous look, but this is not a high quality purple palette in my opinion. It's just not a favorite. And I feel very similarly about some of these other color stories as well. I will admit I haven't given Brilliant Blue the chance it really deserved. It's just too bright for me. So this is a personal opinion. I had strong opinions about the purple. I have less strong opinions about this. Again, I don't think there's as many depths that I can see the variants like in the other palettes, but this one is better, I think, curated than the purple palette. We have Rebellious Red and Pink. I really just don't like this color story. I don't like eyeshadows of this color story, but this one is pretty well done. It's not a bad one at all quality-wise, and then with what you're able to get. There also is Generous Green and Yellow, which I've had a lot of fun with. I don't know, I just feel like it's too green, which I know is crazy because it's a green and yellow palette, but I do think to balance these color stories out, just to create a whole look, I wish there was like more brown tones and neutral greens in here. It's just very, very vibrant, which you might love that. This is just my opinion. And then Outstanding Orange. I don't love an orange eyeshadow. For me, the Wonderful Warm palette was perfect for me, but this is another one where I feel like a lot of these colors are quite similar on the eyelid, which really limits the looks that you can get because there's almost no depth in this palette. So I just feel like some of the color stories here are a little inconsistent, and when it comes to the colorful color stories, some of the quality is lacking. It's not bad. All of these I can get beautiful looks with, but I feel so strongly about the quality and the curation of the neutrals, and I do feel like I noticed a dip with the colors. So that's just what I noticed. It's not a classic popular eyeshadow formula because I would say we're pretty into very pigmented, very shimmery right off the bat eyeshadows. The formulas in the Hung Van Gogh are a little softer, take a little bit more building up, but I think there is beauty in that, and that with that patience, you can build up to get such a beautifully blended look, but it's easier to do that with the neutral shades. Have I made my point clear? I hope. I think some of the eyeshadows in here are great, but all of them are not for me. So let's move on to, the new Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes Nature eyeshadow palette. This is a limited edition for the holidays. This is his 3rd year in a row launching a palette in this ethereal eyes kind of format. It's $69, so it is one of the pricier palettes here. And every year it is truly limited edition. This one was inspired by the colors of nature, and it is a little reminiscent, I would say, of his ABH collab, which if you put it next to the new ABH palette, the ABH palette is a little bit richer in tone, as you can see, but there's definitely some similarities. I've done a full dedicated review on this palette. I don't love it. I don't really recommend it if you've loved previous year's palettes for the beautiful glimmery shades all over the eyelids. The mattes, stunning. Don't have a bad word to say about them. They're very easy to blend out. They have a really great pigment level, and they're really stunning neutral shades. However, the shimmers this year are very lackluster compared to previous years of the same Ethereal Eyes palette. They're not as glittery. They're getting hard pan quicker. They're requiring a lot more building up to get the beautiful sparkling effect on the eyelid. You can definitely speed it up by like wetting your brush and stuff, but I don't want to have to do that because I didn't have to do that with previous year's palettes. So I personally believe that there has been a change in formulation. That said, some of you enjoy this change in formulation if you prefer a softer eyeshadow. Some of you guys are all over this. So these are just my personal opinions. If you enjoyed the Ethereal Eyes palettes in previous years for the sprinkly, twinkly eyeshadows, you're going to be disappointed with the shimmers in this year's. However, if you didn't like those, then this might be the launch for you. It's definitely a little bit softer. I think the tones in here are gorgeous. This is not a color story that hasn't been done before, but it doesn't matter. It's a beautiful everyday selection of neutral shades. And even though I'm disappointed that the formula is different, it is still a gorgeous palette nonetheless. As a neutral wearer, I like the colors in here. I do desire some different color lid shades. I'm always inclined to go for the greens, but I feel like we could have done even lighter champagnes in here. I don't know, I'm just like, it's just not the perfect palette for me. I think it's a nice palette, but I've much preferred the previous two palettes. Then finally, Patrick Ta launched the Major Dimension Essential Eyeshadow Edit eyeshadow palettes And I say palettes because 3 different ones launched. However, I only have one. I don't have a need for the other 2, but I did want to mention this launch. So these 6-pan eyeshadow palettes are $44 each, and the shades that they come in are light, medium, and deep, which I do see light is out of stock. So I do happen to have the light shade. Now this packaging here, very beautiful mirrored packaging. Same thing with the rest of his eyeshadow palettes, but it's just a cut down version. If you have his major dimension eyeshadow palettes of all mattes, I can tell you, you don't need this palette for the colors. However, this is a great way to get the Patrick Ta matte formulation without having to lug around the big palette. So I definitely see the value on this. You don't need it if you have the big one, but maybe you like the fact that this is just a smaller palette, because you know what, this is a very beautiful, easy to blend, easy to build formula. It is very, very powdery though, so do keep that in mind. You're gonna have to tap off your brush. The eyeshadow quality itself, I have nothing bad to say about it. I think it is a beautiful formulation. I've been able to get really great basic matte lay down looks with. You compare this with his glitter eyeshadows or any other liquid cream stick shadows of your choosing. You could also just rock an all matte look. An all matte look is really beautiful. Matte is in right now for this time of year. I do like the light shade that I had. I think it gives a great amount of depth. I don't wish, that's not the point of these palettes, but I do like a little bit of a darker brown though, so I am curious if I would have preferred the medium shade. And what I really like about the deep shade is that there's a black in there, but I do like that there's curations for different skin tones. It's a great basic palette. I think it's great in your collection if you don't have a lot of matte palettes. However, if you are somebody who does, then obviously you're not going to need this. But for his line, to complete his line, this is not even true. He has the all matte palette already. I was gonna say I don't mind when a brand has like an all matte basic palette in their range, but he already has that. So it is a bit redundant, but it definitely is more travel friendly. So great quality. I will say that. If you're interested, you like the color stories, you think it's a great fit in your collection, then I do recommend this, but it's an all matte palette. Okay, and then let's finish off with the Holy Trinity here. Pat McGrath, Natasha, Denona, Danessa, Myricks. We'll start off with Natasha Denona because she had 2 palettes that came out. These are the Eye Sculpt Texture and Tone eyeshadow palettes. They are a whopping $82 each, but there's 2 different shades, a dramatic and a soft option. So these palettes were a play on this iconic mini eye sculpt palette. She took that eye sculpt trend and kind of ran with it and came up with 2 giant eye sculpt palettes, which I will say a little unnecessary. It's a bit excessive to have this many neutrals, but the soft palette here is an all matte palette. There's a couple satin shades here, but for the most part, it's an all matte palette of shadows ranging from beige all the way to black, staying in the neutral family. If you don't know how it works, there's rose, there's peach, there's yellow, there's cool tone, warm tone, neutral, undertoned shades. So that's how it works, from light to dark, and then from undertone as well. And then the dramatic palette, this one for some reason, I don't know why she did this, same thing with the undertones. However, this has a whole row of shimmer / metallic shades, but this one is meant for deeper complexions. She said it was curated for deeper complexions in mine, and then obviously the soft palette for lighter complexions. You know what? I didn't end up using these as much as I thought that I would. These are not bad palettes at all. Between the 2, I definitely prefer the dramatic palette. I just think I get more out of it with these shimmers. And yes, the mattes are a little bit deeper for me, but I make them work anyways. It's still not an impossible palette to work for me. And I can get very pretty looks, of course, with the soft palette, but I'm just reaching for the dramatic over the soft palette. It's a decent matte Natasha Denona formula. If you're familiar with her formulation, she's been coming out with the last few palettes. That is what this is going to be. It's, you know, not as juicy and creamy as the good old OG Natasha Denona days, but it's still a top of the line formulation. But it's a lot of browns. Like, it's a lot. And I feel like I was pretty content with this little mini eye sculpt as the neutral brown eyeshadow palette, matte palette. But she really took it there. But these are fun. They're not fun actually, but I do wear pretty boring eyeshadows, so these do have a place in my collection. But I will admit, I didn't end up using and loving these as much as I thought that I would. Question I get asked a lot: yes, these shades are interchangeable. The big difference and the big change I would have made, why leave the soft palette hanging? I would have loved a few shimmer shades in here because some of these are going to pull a little similar when paired next to one another. But it is a beautiful formula still. I mean, I'm looking down, like, obviously the Patrick Tell with it only being 6 shades, it just makes a lot more sense. This one you do have a little bit of variety, but it is a bit much. What am I trying to get at? I like these palettes. I do. I just don't love them and didn't end up using them as much as I thought I would. But if you are in need of like neutral matte shades in those color stories, they're great basics to have in your collection if you don't have a lot. In fact, I bought my mom the dramatic one for the Sephora sale for her to have because as a neutral wearer, I know she's going to love it. So it's a nice palette, but it won't be for everybody. It's not a necessity, I would say. Let's talk about, I know some of you guys can't believe it, but I don't love the new Pat McGrath Gilded Nirvana Mega Eyeshadow Palette. This doesn't deserve the name of Mega. It is so tiny this year, you guys, compared to the sizes of the Mega palettes in previous years. This is a $72 eyeshadow palette, and it will be limited edition. I did a whole video. This was what was used during the Victoria's Secret fashion show. This is a 12 pan eyeshadow palette, which has 12 kind of jewel toned, molten metallic, plush velvet, radiant sparkles, multi-dimension chromes, as she describes. And I like this palette. I don't love this palette. I don't love this particular formula from Pat McGrath. It is not the same formula as her motherships. If you have paid attention to the little 5-panner she's been doing in previous years, this is that formula. I do think it is a little bit more elevated because in previous years, I've noticed this formula can kind of mush on the eyes and blend together and then fade away. I don't have as much issues with that this year, but I don't know if it's just because I'm going in and knowing that's the case and doing simpler looks, because the thing with this palette is you have to do simpler looks. This is kind of a one and done, two and done eyeshadow palette. If you ask me, there is only one true matte. This one can kind of be a matte and it's the same pinky shade, but whatever, I can get past that. All of these shimmers here are very beautiful on the eyelid, kind of on their own for a simple one and done look. Like, you will love the look with this, but I've noticed some of these shadows, just like previous years with this formula, they don't really adhere to the eyelid very well. It takes warming up with your finger to really get them in there, or wetting your brush, or putting down a glitter glue, which I know a lot of you guys don't have problems doing, but just from a reviewer standpoint, that is something that I have to mention. A good quality 72 eyeshadow palette, it shouldn't really matter what is needed to apply. So I do notice some inconsistencies of the formulas within this palette because some will adhere better to the eyelid than others. I have mixed feelings because no matter what, this palette is stunning. You're going to get gorgeous looks with this palette, and this is a less is more palette where just let a single or 2 eyeshadows show all over the eyelid to get the most impact from this palette, because otherwise it could end up being a mess, and I don't love that it doesn't adhere to the eyelid. It's just $72 for not a perfect formula. She got me with the looks. I think it's beautiful and you can get beautiful looks with it, but I'm not in love with it. I'm just not. It's not the Pat McGrath mothership formula. So, and I think there's some issues with it. And the last and final eyeshadow palette I have to talk about for today's video, I've covered it so much. It's the most expensive one, which is why it might actually be one of the most worth it to pick up during the Sephora sale, because you can save the most amount of money. It's the new Lightwork Freedom palette from Danessa Myricks this year. It is $128. One of the reasons it is so pricey is going to be the packaging here, which I've done videos in depth demoing all of the things that you can do with this packaging, which completely elevates the value of this palette. It is incredible, but let's talk about the quality inside. I am really enjoying the quality of this. I think in previous years with these Lightwork palettes, I've had some mixed opinions with some of the experimentations going on, but this year I really feel like she nailed it. I think first of all, the matte shades in here, very high quality. They're just regular powder matte eyeshadows, very easy to use, and the matte eyeshadows that she chose to use are quite neutral, but they're great bases to the shimmery, glimmery shades in here that she is known for these Lightwork palettes. So I think they really helped complete this palette because you can create full looks with the few mattes that she added, but it still doesn't take away from the heart of the Lightwork line, where it is about these crazy multi-dimensional foiled shades. And this color story is gorgeous. We have like a more earthy toned side, we have a more purpley mauvey side, and then this really cool toned blue gray side as well. So this covers a lot of different color stories as well. None of your looks are going to look the same. And like the Pat McGrath, I would say this palette is going to excel in pretty minimal looks of all over the lid, just picking one of these shades and putting it all over and letting it shine through. This has so many different finishes in here. I believe there's like 11 different finishes in here, and they all are gorgeous. Some of the more chromy ones are going to take more massaging into the eye. That's not my favorite formula from Danessa Myricks. There's a couple of those where you kind of got to massage them in. I don't love that. So not every shade is perfect in my eyes, but a lot of them are. And this has such a mix of different formulas that it's not the whole palette. So I'm not complaining here. And this one is just so gorgeous. I think it's the palette of the year, honestly. It's such a well done, well curated, well thought out, fun palette. And I highly recommend it. These are always limited edition every year, and I think she's going to kind of stick to this style so you can mix and match and build, and it's fun. It's not going to be for everybody, though, of course. It's not a neutral palette if you're into more wearable looks with, you know, clean girl makeup and more natural, simple makeup being the trend right now. This palette isn't for everybody, but if you've been bored, this is a good one. So those are my reviews of the palettes to give you a taste of the formula and just my overall thoughts. Now I'm going to do a ranking. Now keep in mind, part of this ranking, alongside quality and how often I use it, is also whether or not I like the color story. I know there's a small number of people who don't like it when I add my opinions about color story, but it's like my rankings. Of course the color story matters. So let me rank these. Now the reason I didn't start off this video like I normally do with ranking styles is because of the interesting concept of the Hung Van Gogh color stories. To be honest, I'm just not a big fan of the colorful color stories that Hung Van Gogh has. I just find there to be some inconsistencies and just not what I like out of a colorful eyeshadow palette. Also keeping in mind that I'm a neutral person, and even if I'm wearing something not neutral, I still tend to gravitate towards something more soft and just not really vibrant, which a lot of these are. So between that, me not loving all of the layouts of these colors, but also not loving the quality of all of them, I have unranked just at the bottom here, Outstanding Orange, Generous Green and Yellow, Rebellious Red and Pink, Brilliant Blue, Passionate Purple. Composed Cool I threw in here. I would say Composed Cool is probably the top of the pack for me because it's pretty well curated, but the colorful ones I'm just not as big of a fan of from his line. Okay, let's move on to number 9, which this one is hard. These were really, really hard to rank, you guys, because they're all very good. Like, it doesn't matter these little nitpicky things that I'm saying. They're all very, very good. But I really am disappointed by the shimmers in the Ethereal Eyes Nature palette from Makeup by Mario because it takes so much building up all over my eyelid, and I just know what the brand can do. And it's a shame because the color story is so beautiful, but you know, the competition is tough out here, so that one shot it to the bottom pretty quickly. But I still really like this palette and I'm still using it, especially with these amazing mattes. So it's just where it fell. Don't think too hard about it, just let me. Which makes number 8, the Natasha Denona Sculpt Texture and Tone Palette. I know, but I mean, this is just where it fell. It's still a good palette. This is the soft one. You know, I like the dramatic one better, but it's just coming from a perspective of I didn't reach for this as much as I thought I would. And when I do reach for this palette, I do want to reach for other palettes to complete my looks. So this just doesn't have the it factor for me. It's very beautiful quality, but it's not the curation of matte tones that I personally like. So while still very nice, this is where it fell. Number 7 is the Pat McGrath Gilded Nirvana palette, which would have ranked a lot higher if I didn't have the problem with these eyeshadows adhering to the eyelid very easily. Like, it's just too difficult. I shouldn't have to warm them up. I shouldn't see the actual particles of pigment sitting in separation all over my eyelid and have to take the time to warm them up, which is a shame because it is a gorgeous palette. And if they had solved that issue, they did with some shades, but not all of them. If they had solved that issue, this one definitely would have ranked higher, but it's $72, you guys. Number 6 is the Hung Van Gogh Wonderful Warm Shadow. This is just a beautiful, warm-toned, neutral eyeshadow, very well curated. And like I said, it's a little bit of a different formula than what's trendy right now, but I kind of like that about this. So this is where I feel like the palette's really excelled in the neutral tones, especially because you can see light to dark. We have different ranges and undertones here, so you get a lot of versatility with this palette, all things considered, in that it is a warm neutral palette. Number 5 is the Texture and Tone from Natasha Denona, the dramatic version. I just get more out of this palette, and I think the row of shimmers is a huge reason why. Of course, sometimes when I dig in this, then I dig into the soft because I want some lighter shades. So I don't like that I feel like I have to have both with these palettes. It's just kind of there, you know, it's a nice palette. I like my browns, so it's fun to have, but not a need for me, but very well done. Number 4 is the Patrick Ta Major Dimension Essential Artistry palette in light, which I know is kind of crazy, but it's a very beautiful palette, you guys. The quality is so, so good, and honestly, the shades that he put in there are the perfect background for every day of truly sculpting my eye and the shades that I like. Like, I like the tones in here better than I do in the soft palette of the Natasha Denona when it comes to sculpting my eye shape and creating a background for other shimmers and textures to then go all over my eyelid. Just a little bit powdery. That's my one critique, but super easy to use. Number 3, I'm going to give to the ABH Mini Embers palette. It's just beautiful, and it's like a little different for ABH, and it's kind of sultry and smoky, and I really love the vibes with this one. And even though I have these shades over and over again in my collection, there's just something about this that I'm vibing with. Now, keep in mind, it is the one that I've used the least in today's video, but I'm really liking this. This is my vibe right now. Number 2 is going to the Hung Van Gogh Nude Neutral. I mean, it's just a beautifully curated everyday neutral palette. Now, this one, I love the different textures in here. I love the tones that he decided to put in. I think he knocked it out of the park with creating a good, true neutral palette that's also quite modern. So love what he did with this one. And then number 1, with my own biases, of course, I just think this is the palette of the year, the Danessa Myricks Lightwork Freedom palette this year. I think it's unique. It's fun. You can still get pretty wearable looks, but it's a little funky for the makeup world right now, which I'm loving that risk, even though I am a boring neutral wearer. If I was to add color, like the ones that she added, other than these, are the ones that I want to wear. You know, it inspires me and it makes me want to have fun with makeup. So the genius behind this as well should not go unnoticed and unranked. So there we have it. Don't take those rankings too seriously, but in my collection, this is like in the order of how much I need them in my life. But those are my thoughts on 15 of the newest eyeshadow palettes at Sephora. It's going to be interesting to see. Do we think this is going to stick? I'm seeing people on the internet like, make eyeshadow and full glam come back. I don't know if it's going to be enough, but I would love to see that happen, and I hope that this is the start. So if you've tried any of these eyeshadow palettes, please let me know your thoughts down below. Do you disagree or agree with anything that I said? As always, I will have all of the eyeshadow palettes that I talked about linked down below, as well as tagged in YouTube shopping, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys, have a good one.
It's delicious.